It's February 7th, 2023. I'm Mariano Gigi, and this is burrowtape number 1. The burrowtapes are a series of recordings where I'll take you behind the scenes of my webcomic, Burrowmates. Woo! I'll talk a little bit about my process for it, and at the end I'll answer some questions. I stopped updating the original comic in late 2018, so going back to Burrowmates after almost 4 years in 2022, I wanted the new autumn season to be both a continuation and a fresh start. I wanted new readers to be able to jump right in, but I also wanted to keep enough continuity for them to go back if they were curious enough. The new art style is supposed to reflect this in a way. I decided to use lines this time. In the old comic, I used like a lineless art style, and I painted every page. And I simplified the design rules for everything, like for backgrounds and characters. And I kept the color palette even more limited than before. All of this was in order to work faster, but I also really wanted to focus more on character expressions and just in general borrow more from animation and storyboarding principles. The first storyline works as a starting point for Metzi and Grace, specifically. As the title may suggest, the storyline was originally supposed to be two separate episodes, Book Fair and MMORPG Grace. No, MMORP Grace. Okay, I had never said that out loud before. So the first story was about Metzi and Xochy going to a book fair at the cafe where Metzi works, where Metzi meets a famous writer she admires, who I called Madeline Fox. So this idea came from my experience at comics and animation events, like conventions and conferences and stuff. So many times I've been in like close proximity to someone I really admire and that I would like to ask questions to. But in the end, sometimes I let my insecurities like ruin my chances at a conversation or even just saying hi. Like even that feels like too much. I wanted there to be a build-up of Metzi's insecurities, like since the beginning of the story. First, her cool coworker Kay like minimizes the importance of the situation. And they're like, "Oh, like it's not a big deal. Like she comes here every year." Then she sees Lena, the lizard character, possibly doing better than her at what she wants to do. Like she actually like has writing. She's showing people, and she's like putting herself out there. So Metzi starts to feel like completely unprepared for this encounter. Then Sachi encourages her to talk to Madeline, but all she can think of is how she deletes everything she ever writes and how she basically has nothing to show. And this leads to an anticlimax, which I didn't realize was sort of a bold choice before, like until I was like deep into production and I couldn't really like rethink it. But I stand by it because I mean that's life sometimes. This is a slice of life story, so it really like speaks to Metzi's personality that she ends up not meeting her hero after all. She doesn't really get anything out of the book fair except like reading Lena's scene, which she finds that she likes. So this is the starting point for her. Like sometimes you start by failing, I guess. Will she get over her writer's block? What's even causing it? I guess we'll find out later. I turned the Grace episode into the B plot because I realized there wasn't much that happened in it, and I really like I didn't feel like making it longer just for the sake of it. The original premise for the episode was just Grace plays an online game with her long distance internet friend, and she gets too absorbed in it. She starts like avoiding her real life and like just only thinking about leveling up in the game. And then her internet friend helps her like value IRL more and like appreciate her Burrowmates and stuff. And while I was rewriting for the new webcomic, like when I was reworking everything in 2022, I realized that I didn't really want Grace to have that realization so early and so easily. Because the reason she's so absorbed in the game is the emotional aftermath of her breakup, which is like what drives her for most of the story I have planned, I guess. Um, we haven't even seen her breakup, but it's really defining how she behaves in this comic. In case you haven't read it, the summer season finale is Grace finally cutting ties with her ex girlfriend, and I really wanted the autumn season to be like the consequence of that, like both positive and negative. And I decided to start with sort of the negative, I guess. Because like when autumn starts, like I don't know about you, but s- maybe this is just a me thing, but I tend to get a little depressed in around September, and I tend to like become a little bit of a hermit even more than I am normally. So I guess Grace's story was kind of drawing from that. Even though she found like a new, like much needed support system in her new Burrowmates, like at the end of the summer, she's still really hurt, and she's gonna return to her old habits in order to cope sometimes. I wanted the online game world to be kind of bland. Uh, I wanted to communicate that it's not healthy for Grace to spend all day there. So I really wanted it to have like muted colors. Like I mean, it's green because like all of Grace's like video game stuff is gonna be green. But it's also like a really like boring shade of green. I wanted it to be like kind of like an. It almost reminds you of like an office or something. In the end, I think I might have been a little bit too successful in making it look boring, so maybe it doesn't really look like a fun game. But I think it gets the message across, so I decided to like leave it be. For Grace's online friend, I really wanted a positive character that was different from the way Xochy is positive, for example. Just like she's just playing the game for fun. She doesn't really care about leveling up, and she doesn't really have a filter the way Sachi does. She's not really thinking about like what's going through Grace's head when she's just like expressing how much fun she wants to have and how much fun Grace could be having. So Grace finally snaps and looks out, and now she's gonna have to find another way to deal with the pain. Sachi is kind of in the sideline at this point. She kind of links the two stories together. Like she appears at the beginning, like asking Grace if she wants to go to the book fair, and then she encourages Metzi to talk to Madeline, and she's the reason Metzi gets to read the scene. So she's kind of like in the background, like trying to keep both her friends afloat. So she's not really focusing on herself, and that's where she's starting now. But I'll talk more about her on burrowtape number 2. And now here's some questions from patrons. If you'd like to support the comic and my other indie projects, you can go to patreon.com/themarianogg. And for $2 American a month, you'll have access to the latest Burrowmates pages, months before they come out. There's also concept art, bonus pages, works in progress, other fun stuff, and you get most of it for the $2. So think about it. Uh, anyway, Lore asks, how did you choose each Burrowmate animal, and how did you choose the colors for each character? So Sochi and Metzi are based on two stuffed animals I had as a kid. So it's like I chose their personalities based on their animals more than the other way around. A cheerful bunny and a deadpan raccoon just made sense to me. Like I really liked how different they were, And I created Grace later on when I first made comics about them, when I was like 11. Her thing used to be that she was really unlucky. Like she was kind of like a shy nerd who was really unlucky. So I made her a black cat because it was like an obvious joke, and I guess I just wanted to draw a cat. She became dark green when I was planning the webcomic, like back in 2016, because I really wanted the main cast to be more colorful. And since her eyes were already green, I just made all of her green, and I like the way she looks. Metzi used to be gray like a real raccoon, but I made her like a grayish purple, so it would be like a colder contrast to Xochy. And I think she's the least saturated of the three of them. So it's like, yeah, like it's almost gray, but it's purple. And sometimes I make it more saturated just for fun. And Sochi has always been pink, but for the comic, I try to make her like a really specific shade of pink because it reminds me of bubblegum. These next ones are from who would like to keep his privacy, so I'll bleep that. The first one says, I've heard it said that a good burrowmate keeps to themselves without being asocial. Would you say Grace is a good burrowmate? And going by that metric, Grace is an excellent burrowmate, or at least she was during the summer because she's being pretty asocial at the moment. The second one says, a platypus? Zoe the platypus? Yeah, she's a semi-aquatic egg-laying gamer of action, and she'll be back sooner than you think. The third question says, as somebody currently in Suchi's shoes, in the you should go talk to her scene, it's difficult to walk the line between being understanding when a friend like Metzi hesitates, and on the other hand, enabling inaction. It's commendable that Suchi can toe this line, but how much of it is her carefully applied empathy, and how much of it is simply Suchi's bubbly personality making her perceive life in a more straightforward term than Metzi? Well, this is one of those things that's really open to interpretation, but here's what was on my mind when I was working on it. The thing that I try to convey in every Sochi and Metzi scene is that they've been friends for a really long time, like since childhood. So they know everything about each other, basically, and as beautiful as that it can be, they can also really enable each other without thinking about it. So answering the question, it's not really that Sochi lives life in a more simple way. It's more that she's gonna root for Metzi no matter what, and Metzi knows this. So while this is a strong foundation for their friendship, it also means that Metzi can basically act like a coward, like not do what she's set out to do, and Sochi's just gonna be like, "Oh, good job, you did your best." And like sometimes you need that, like that can be really good, but I guess they're gonna have to ask themselves if this is what they need. Finally, Francisco asks, when are you gonna make an episode about the raccoons that were living in the vents of the Acapulco Town Council? Such a local reference. So at first I wasn't sure how to reply, but what I will say is that you'll meet Metzi's family pretty soon, like when we're closer to winter. So that's what I'll answer to that. And now some more questions from readers. Sophia asks, what character was the first one you created? Sochi, but Metzi came soon after. Rachel asks, how did you choose your color palette? I always try to make it really simple and as monochromatic as possible. And like I said, this is to save time, but I just think it looks cute, and I really want the characters to stand out. So, for example, in summer it was like mostly, well, when they were inside the burrow, it was like browns and like beiges, and when they were outside it was greens. Now because it's autumn, it's mostly like browns and oranges, even when they're outside. And so yeah, I try to make the characters a little bit more saturated, so they stand out. Um, and yeah, and this time I'm making all their outfits the same hue as their fur, just so it's simpler, and I like it. I like a minimalist approach. Julio asks, "Did you purposely draw the characters to be androgynous?" Not really, but I think it's fun when people perceive them that way because you know what's androgynous in cartoons. And he also asks, "What are your thoughts on gender coding? For example, eyelashes for female characters." Um, I mean, I could talk about this all day. Like, I could do like a whole episode about this. But basically, I think it's pretty arbitrary. You get more interesting results when you don't follow it that rigidly, because like really like who's to, like as a person who has socialized male and has really long eyelashes, like I've never understood the eyelash thing. Xochy has visible eyelashes, but it's because it matches her personality, not because she's a girl. Think of SpongeBob, for example. Um, but yeah, that's the gist of it. Thanks for listening. This was an experiment, so let me know what you think. Did you hate it? Did you like it? Should I do it differently? Anything is good. I'm the Mariano GG everywhere that matters, and my website is marianogg.net. Thank you for reading Burrowmates, and I'll see you next week for the next storyline. Bye!